Is the echo okay? Oh, good. Okay. Depending upon the audience, one of the things I like to say is the best way to manage stress is to not have any. And there's a way to not have any. By kunta. By kunta, without anxiety. For the rest of us, it's kunta. It's some anxiety and some stress. So there's stress management, and I'm not a corporate person. I'm in the flight on the way over here, there was a nice man. He was very happy to go back to home. He was from visiting in Midwest and back. So he asked me, "Are you a Buddhist monk?" And I said, "No, I'm a Krishna monk." He said, "Oh, what's that?" So we got to talk a little bit about Krishna. He seemed like a relaxed gentleman. But so, because I'm, my background is what my background is. This little device isn't working. Help. This little slide changer isn't working now. Help. Oh, technology wizards. Okay. Okay. I can stand what to do. Okay, well, let's see.
Maybe it just takes a little bit. Tell me when you want me to change.
Okay, change. Next. Leading to experiencing real satisfaction within. So that's... Okay, fine.
Hello?
I've got two microphones. I got one in my pocket. I got one on the lapel. I got this one. This one works for sure. Yeah. Okay. Because I didn't know the audience, I asked a few times and I didn't get a clear explanation. So, yoga approach, just keeping it, very generic. As you all know, yoga means linking or connecting. Making a connection with what? Making a connection with the source of everything. Ultimately, that's yoga. Making a connection with the source of everything. And so, when the connection, as one approaches making a connection with the source of everything, then there's a sense of satisfaction. And when there's a sense of satisfaction, stress diminishes, or it's just like when you turn the light on, darkness is dispelled. It's very simple. Turn the light on, and darkness is dispelled. And then a dimmer switch, you turn down the light, and the darkness comes in, and stress comes in. So stress management, a big principle of stress management is increasing that connection up to the point of the sense of real satisfaction within is achieved. Next. So just because I didn't know the audience, this is just a generic, you all know these ways of getting something out of a presentation. Third person sharing, next. So something that you hear, you have friends, share something that you hear that resonates with you. And that'll help it go inside. Next. There's something that we'll hear, probably something you'll hear that you'll feel this is particularly beneficial, and tell a close friend about it, and make a plan if you want to do something to improve your capabilities of stress management. Next. some people study this. This is, in this axis is stress, and that axis is performance. And there's some stress helps optimal performance, and then the bell curve goes down and it decreases performance. So we're going to spend some time over here on the increasing performance side. Next. So healthy stress increases your motivation. You see something and an opportunity to meet that something, a sense of challenge, hope in achieving that purpose that you wish to achieve, something that's meaningful to you. You pay attention to detail. You know how these things work. So you're energized by certain kinds of distress. Stress. Next. If any of you happen to know who George de Menstrel is? He's an Italian gentleman. One day, next, he was walking in the forest with his dog, and his dog brushed against some burrs. Next. And the burrs got caught in the fur of his dog. So that can be stressful. But he considered carefully the situation. Next. And he came up with an invention. The invention was Velcro. Velcro was a way of imitating what burrs do, the little hook at the end, and then something that the hook connects to. And he made a pile of money from a situation that was a stressful situation. So he was looking at not just the unhappiness or the difficulty that he had to go through taking the burrs off his dog's fur, and considered how to take a challenge and make some opportunity out of that challenge. And many, in space travel, what to speak of shoes, all kinds of applications of Velcro. So life doesn't have to be stressful. Next. But then there are situations where performance doesn't increase, but it starts to decrease. And that's, I think, where we're speaking about, or I'm supposed to be speaking about. Next. There's a category of toxic stress. That's the undesirable one. And one of the behaviors of toxic stress is looking into the future. You probably know some people like this, and they worry about what if, future. I mean, you don't turn that to a zero position, but some people become obsessive about what if, future. And then they look in the past and if only. So then it's just an activity in the mind. It's not anything practical, but it's called the snowballing effect. Next. And it can lead to some self-destruction. Maybe you know some people that have that problem. Next. It's called in the counseling field the avalanche effect. Depression, I did some studies on this topic. World Health Organization, it has some statistic, worldwide, global, something like 70% of the world population has had experienced depression in the course of each year. So the year that I studied, something like 45% had a major, like a clinical depressive episode. It's a problem. I mean, probably not in your field, but a big cause of it is this. So avalanches start with something small, from a study. When snow falls in mountains, usually it ends up having packed snow that just like stays there all the time. And then sometimes there's a light snowfall that falls on top of the packed snow. And when a little bit of snow towards the top of the mountain after the snowfall starts to fall down the mountain, then a little bit of snow, a little bit more snow, a little bit more snow, and it becomes an avalanche. And it's deadly. People get killed from avalanches. So I learned this from visiting in mountains. People that like mountain climbing, they have this system that they fire some, I forget what you call it, a plug. It's not real bullet, but it's a dead, they fire this thing towards the top of the mountain to see if it's going to agitate the mountain to make an avalanche. And if it doesn't, then it's safe to climb the mountain. So there's precautions to take, but worrying about the future can have very, very debilitating effects on health and well-being. Next. Generally, less than the avalanche effect, just loss of sleep, poor health, nervousness, broken relationships, unbalanced life, urgency, addiction, like I got it, it has to be immediate, the worrying tendency. Next. And then general, bad habits, just to get relief from that toxic stress, drinking, drugs, illicit relationships, loss of positivity, damaging relationships, envy and jealousy, it's just toxic. Next. So there's another person who I like a lot, Viktor Frankl. Does anyone here know who Viktor Frankl is? No. Viktor Frankl is a Jewish man who was in a Nazi concentration camp during World War II, and he survived. By profession, Viktor Frankl was a psychiatrist. And he survived that horrible experience by envisioning what he was going to do when he was on the other side of that experience. What he wanted to do was help people overcome negative emotions that are caused by circumstances they can't change. In his case, he couldn't change the circumstance. And it was really horrible. I mean, the book he writes every day, just to intimidate the people. So they put each of the persons in the concentration camp in a little corrugated box with a big chain on the door. So it was a solitary confinement in a corrugated box out in the field. And they'd come by every day and wiggle the chain. And then the next one, wiggle the chain. And then the next one. And then one of the chains that wiggled, they'd open the lock. And then they'd go inside the corrugated box and grab somebody and drag them off to the gas chamber. And they'd scream. And this is an everyday ordeal, just to intimidate the heck out of people. One day it was his turn because they opened the lock and started to take him to the gas chamber. And something happened. The something that happened was off in the distance, there was a sound. And the guards immediately went to deal with whatever that disturbance was. And it just left him standing in the middle of the field. And by the time they dealt with this disturbance and they came back, he put him back in his little corrugated box. And he survived, and at the end, he wrote a book, Man Search Why. But he didn't go in that whining and complaining kind of why. He wrote, what his vision while he was in that horrible situation that there was nothing he could do about, how to help people who are confined by circumstances they can't change. Sometimes you can change circumstances. Sometimes you can't. And when you're confined by circumstances you can't change, how do you maintain your sanity? So he writes, what man actually needs is not attentionless state, but rather the striving and struggling for some goal worthy of him. I like this. What he needs is not the discharge of tension at any cost, but the call of a potential meaning waiting to be fulfilled by him. Each of us has some ability, divinely bestowed, some ability to do something. And how that something, that ability that we have that can be best used, that has meaning for you and most likely meaning for other people, then that gives strength. It gives an inner sense of purpose in life, without which stress can get out of control. Even when, I mean, I can't imagine any of us are going to have to be what he went through, to go through what he went through. But he was very strong, and he wanted to share. And so afterwards, in addition to the book, it's a little skinny book if you're interested, really skinny, reprinted 19 times because it's skinny, easy to read, and very pithy, lots of nice sayings, and very meaningful to people that are dealing with difficult situations. Next. Just a little image showing to go from a difficult situation to some purpose that's meaningful to you. Next. There's a photograph, a younger version of him after he, was released from the concentration camp. Here's the title of the book. Next. Everything can be taken from a man, but the last of the human freedoms to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstance, to choose one's own way. So free will to go to a place that you want to go to. It's meaningful to you. It's using as other terms, a meaning to your life that's awaiting for you to fulfill. Just sharing. Just yesterday, I was in Chicago suburbs, and for 3 evenings, the topic was compassion. And one of the slides on the topic of compassion was spoken by an employee of Google. And Google was the topic of something Collins, John Collins, Jack Collins, something Collins, From Good to Great. You know the book? Something Collins was his last name. So he, being the spokesperson for Google, said, right off the top, I'm Buddhist. And the leadership of Google decided to go from good to great, Jim Collins is his name, to go from good to great, we have to have a proper mission. And then the mission had 3 components. It has to do with this earlier slide, a mission waiting for you, a purpose waiting for you to fulfill. So the organizers of Google decided there are lots of information websites out there. So what's the best motivator for us to make from good to great? And so there's a motivation, an action, and a feeling. And he in this TED Talk, he described it and said these are actually the principles of Buddhism. You want to do something that's good for other people, you feel something for other people, and you take some action that matches those two. So there's the motivational and the affective parts or components. So circumstances, this is Bhagavad Gita. In the world in which we live, it's a world of duality, and sometimes it rains, and sometimes it shines. And it's been really hot, so probably it's nice to get some rain. But it's a place of duality, and sometimes. And if you obsess about, you don't like that sometimes, you want this sometimes, wait a while, it's going to change, and it's going to be another. It's a place of duality. And accepting it's a place of duality, now what are you going to do? What's the purpose of the human form of life. I mean, that's a thoughtful person doesn't just respond and react. They're thinking this higher. Viktor Frankl is not a yogi, but he has ideas that are very similar to yoga ideas. Next. Here's another one. Next. Life's stress creating adversity. A nice attitude. This is again Viktor Frankl. Yes? Next. There is also purpose in life, which is almost barren of both creation and enjoyment, and which admits of but one possibility of high moral behavior, namely, in man's attitude to his existence, and existence restricted by external forces. So external forces may be pointed to as this the cause of my stress or distress. But the free will choice within, the attitude of how there's the world of duality and sometimes. Now, who am I? What's my mission in life? What's that which is awaiting for me to fulfill besides, earning a living? Is there a higher purpose? And if you connect with that higher purpose, it has everything to do actually with yoga. What's the higher purpose? To know yourself. Next. I like this one, the Chinese farmer story. Once upon a time, there was a Chinese farmer. And the Chinese farmer, turns out he was a Taoist. And the village people told the Chinese farmer, oh, how fortunate you are, you have a horse, because we have to plow our fields by hand, but you have a horse, you can plow your field much more easily. Great fortune has come to your life. And the Chinese farmer said, good fortune, ill fortune, who can say? Some time passed, the horse ran away. And the villagers came to the farmer and said, oh, what misfortune, the horse ran away. Now you have to plow your fields like us. And he replied, good fortune, ill fortune, who can say? Taoism is like go with the flow kind of philosophy. After some time, the horse came back. When the horse came back, there were several wild horses that came back with that horse. So the villagers came and said, what good fortune. Now you don't just have one horse, you have multiple horses. You can plow your fields very easily. And he said, good fortune, ill fortune, who can say? Some time passed. His son fell off the horse, one of the horses, trying to train the horse how to plow the field. And the villagers came, oh, what misfortune, your son fell off the horse and broke his leg. And he said, good fortune, ill fortune, who can say? Some time passed, and the Chinese government went to war. And they had a conscription act. All able-bodied men between this age, that age, had to join the army. And when the army people came to that village, they didn't take his son because he had a broken leg. So the villagers came to him and said, oh, what good fortune, your son didn't have to go to the army because he had a broken leg. That's the end of the story. He said, good fortune, ill fortune, who can say? Now that's like, passive and neutral, but how do you regard misfortune depends on your attitude in life, which is part of what Viktor Frankl has a different idea than passivity. His idea is there's some mission awaiting for you to be fulfilled. I like that teaching. Next. A major source of stress is worrying. Maybe some of you don't do that, but many people do. That's this, the snowball effect or the avalanche effect. Next. Worrying, a simple way to define, you fantasize into the future and you see trouble. What if? Next. And then you feel some emotion about the what if, and then you get busy with the what if, and you're busy with the emotion. Next. So there's some general and then some even more specific, starting with a general. Don't tuck it under the rug or pretend that the situation doesn't exist. You experience there's a worry, there's a possible something that might happen. Then, next. Hello? Okay. Then there may be something you can do, maybe something you can't do, just like Viktor Frankl's statement. So here's something you can do, and give attention to that something that you know you can do. It may not be responsive to that cause that's giving you a worry, what might happen in the future, but something that's meaningful to you and you can invest in it. Okay, next. When you're moving in a direction that inspires you, the nervous system becomes more calm. We're going to get a little bit into medical science and the autonomic nervous system. Next. And those things that you feel you can do that have some meaning and some positive purpose to you, you invest in those things and you move forward. Now, there's two charts that show what not to do and what to do with a little more detail. Next. So, the cycle of stress. Life throws rocks at you. And you acknowledge it, it hurts. And the rock that was thrown at you, there's nothing you can do about it. You can't change it. You can't reverse it. It already happened. Next. No. Could you go back rather than two at a time? There, thank you. We pick it up. This is bad stress. We pick it up and beat ourselves with it. Dwell on the misfortune or the complaint about where it came from. Moan, put ourselves down, I'm bad. Next. Then it doesn't solve anything. You just feel more anxiety, frustration, depression, more negative emotion. Next. Hello. We already spoke about this, picking up some bad habits. I know some people that just have a procrastination problem. Maybe you folks don't. And indulging in food unnecessarily, drugs, anger, overwork, over anything, just obsession, behavior. Next. And then it just cycles around again. You feel guilty, bad about yourself. Why did I yield to this? And you feel more stress. So that's what not to do. And it happens. Next. How to break the cycle. Starts the same. Life throws rocks at you, it hurts. You can't change it. Next. Hello. You may have to stand right next to the computer. What? Oh, come on. I know what the slides are. There's more. I'm going to stand back here and just deal with it back here.
Use this.
The program got frozen.
All right. While Maharaj is fixing that, just wanted to give a little bit of an introduction about him. His Holiness Prabhu Ramapada ji has been a monk for over 50 years and is a renowned scholar of Eastern Vedic thought and philosophy. He's a highly respected spiritual leader and guide who has dedicated his life to building and sustaining spiritual communities around the world. including in America and India. And he's currently based in New York, but travels extensively, giving invited presentations and workshops like this one at universities, corporate venues, community centers, yoga studios, and cultural institutions. Um, and some of his highly acclaimed presentations cover a wide range of topics, including Who Am I? Currency of Relationships, Mysteries of Sound, Stress Management, which we're doing today, and Overcoming Negative Emotions. Um, Yes, that's pretty much it. But I've had the privilege to listen to him for quite some time, and I feel that there's a lot of value that we can get by getting grounded into, especially with the amount of stress that we have in our daily life. We have so many things that we are always dealing with. But it's important for us to be able to manage that, because there are so many things, like we're just seeing so many things are thrown at us and we can't do anything about it. But we keep on trying to distract ourselves very often, because if one thing is not working in our favor, we go towards another thing. We try to make sure that, we are, at least from our work perspective, we want to do the absolute best. But sometimes we need to step back. We need to realize what is the value that we are getting from it also. Hopefully, as we continue on, there's more and that you can learn.
Doing a good job. You can give the class. Okay, so there was the toxic stress, and here's how to break the cycle. Life throws rocks at you, it hurts, you acknowledge it. Don't deny it. You pick up the rock, whatever it is, and toss it in the air, and you consider options. This is mode of goodness. You go into reflective space rather than the pain space or the negative emotion space. You go into the reflective space. Here's the rock. It hit me. It hurts. And toss the rock in the air, the circumstance. And what are my options? So your options should be reasonable within something that you feel you can actually do. And it's going to address at least the emotion, if not the rock. So don't throw the rock away, pretend that it never happened, don't be in denial. And then sometimes there's a simple solution, and sometimes there's not. And don't feel that you have to have an immediate, complicated or simple solution. Sometimes I found, just wait and let it become more clear what's the best thing to do, whether it's yourself or someone dear to you, someone that's important to you, and they're going through some turmoil of some kind or another. And for you, it's stressful. And for them, it's stressful. But you may not have an immediate answer. That's okay. It's how to deal with the stress itself. Okay. Now, here comes a little discussion on the autonomic nervous system. Oops. Gosh. Okay. Here's another approach in dealing with worries, because this is the worry syndrome. Not in an angry, but express yourself. A standard thing: take 10 deep breaths or a deep breath. Slow down your autonomic nervous system, and then you consider what are possible solutions. I do this regularly. I mean, sometimes literally just a piece of paper or my computer. Options 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Brainstorm. You eliminate without evaluating. You just brainstorm. Then you eliminate some because they're not so good, and then you have some left, and you look at the ones that are left, and what are some practical approaches to deal with a situation that's difficult. Now, there's a few statistics. This is estimated 60 to 90% of doctor visits involve stress-related complaints. So it has physical, not just mental and psychological problems. A little bit, I mean, a before I became a practicing Hare Krishna devotee, I was in the process of becoming a medical doctor. I took a leave of absence, and it became a long leave of absence from that pursuit. So I have some interest in science and medicine and all of that. So here comes a little bit of that. The autonomic nervous system, it's an involuntary process of your nervous system. And it controls heartbeat. It controls when your blood vessels dilate or constrict. That has, you don't control it. It just happens involuntarily. Like you don't plan how you're going to digest your food. If circumstances are good, you can digest your food nicely. And if it's not, involuntarily, you don't digest so well. You can have some problems, or you eat less, or whatever. So heart rate, blood pressure, and so many things. Two main situations: fight or flight, involuntary. Emergency, fight or flight. And then another involuntary, rest and digest. And those are described as sympathetic, parasympathetic, and enteric nervous system. Those are subsets of the autonomic nervous system. Without going into the detail, how to bring that into proper balance when if you're in a job or a lifestyle or just living in the world and there's stress, something that is guaranteed to be helpful is meditation. Now, you may not know, maybe you do know who Herbert Benson is in the 60s when TM was very popular. In Harvard Medical School, he did like 30 years of study and came to certain findings. You can read the text if you like, but it's just meditation helps calm the nervous system and helps you be in a more balanced way of dealing with the complexities of life. Here it's the 1960s. I'm not going to go through all this because it's very detailed. The conclusion is meditation has been used successfully in the treatment and prevention of high blood pressure, heart disease, migraine headaches, autoimmune diseases such as diabetes and arthritis. And he studied this for a couple of decades, and has the Harvard Medical School microscope overseeing all the work that he did and the findings and the evaluation of the findings. And he recommends, this is this section just above, meditation practice. Any meditation practice can duplicate these with as long as 4 factors. Relatively quiet environment, at least for some part of the day. A mental device that provides a constant stimulus. In other words, sometimes meditation on a candle, or meditation on a mandala, or meditation on a sound, or meditation on Om, or something. So he called it a device. Comfortable position and receiving. Yours is the word passive, but I want to receive. You turn your receivers on. Not rather than just doing. And research at Harvard suggests, this is from a magazine, that the deep sense of calm we can achieve through yoga, prayer, or simple deep breathing exercises can help counter the effects of chronic stress. One of the places I visit since 2010 is in China. There's a detail of how that started. But one of the places a few years ago that I visited was in Kunming. And Kunming is the nearest big city in China to India. It's like a 2 hours and 15-minute flight to Calcutta. So it's the western part. It's on the other side of a mountain range, so it's kind of, different than the rest of mainland China. Very peaceful place. And the person that was organizing the event in Kunming was an employee of China Eastern Airlines, like an executive in China Eastern Airlines. And that's like United or American Airlines or something like that in America. It's a big airline company. And the topic that I was discussing there was the art of meditation, overcoming negative emotion, similar. And at the end of the first session, this organizer pulled me to the side and said, just this morning, one of our chief executives on the 7th floor of this was on a Saturday, they jumped out the window of the 7th floor and splattered on the sidewalk. Because suicide, overcome by the pressure and stress, et cetera, of their life. So immediately, this organizer said, the executives ordered that all the members of in officer positions or executive positions in our company must take a meditation course because they don't like suicides. Nobody likes it, but I'm bringing it up because it's a known factor for a long, long time that meditation helps. And the second series of Benson's research of the different types of meditation, what's most effective? And he found most effective is something that's connected with sound or a sacred sound. And there are different sacred sounds. Chanting of Om is one, it's a very standard one that these from India people know. And there are other mantras that people know. When I was over 55 years ago, I was a college kid, undergraduate college kid. And so I got tuned into meditation and tuned into sound being effective. I mean, you saw Benson's work, 1968. It's when I was in college, undergraduate school. So I experimented with 5 or 6 different mantras or methods of using sound, and they're effective. So one of them I found was especially effective for me. And so I've been working with that a lot. Okay, it's stuck again. Oops. Yeah. I've made this presentation a couple of times, and one of the things that people told me afterwards, oh gosh, is eat less sugar. Because sugar, it does certain things to your body, but it also does something to your nervous system. Oh boy. What? Can you just next? Okay. Henry David Thoreau. You're from India. Do you know who Henry David Thoreau is? An American poet in the, revolutionary, the post-revolutionary, American Revolutionary period. Henry David Thoreau. From England, but Henry David Thoreau. With all your science, can you tell me how it is that light comes into the soul? So now we're going into the spiritual dimension directly. Next. There's a Japanese gentleman, Dr. Emoto, that did an 8-year experiment with different sounds and how sounds affect matter. So what he did was, over some matter or over some liquids, he made a certain sound. So the one on the right, you make me sick. They made crystals. They froze the water and took a picture of the crystal. And that's that you make me sick. And then just sound vibration and with an emotion that it changed the configuration of water to look like that for when the words and the emotion was love and gratitude. The point is sound and emotion affects matter. Stress management has a lot to do with the attitude that we have towards the circumstances of life that are stressful. Opportunity instead of misery. Next. Okay. This is a study. It ended up being in a science journal, as you see across the top. They were doing brain scans of monks to see what was going on, like Dalai Lama and others, when they're doing their meditation, what's going on with their brain? Is it different than other people's brains? And sure enough, it's different. And meditation, after some period of time, it alters the configuration of the brain. It makes it the brain, which helps to control the rest of the other parts of the body, becomes more suitable towards a stress-free life. Now, it doesn't mean you have to become a monk in order to become stress-free or diminished in your being better able to handle the dualities of life. All it is to say that meditation is very helpful on the autonomic nervous system, on the structures of the brain, on your heartbeat, and so forth and so on. Next. But there's the one I was mentioning. Eat less sugar, or be conscious of the amount of sugar intake, because sugar helps increase stress. So some is fine, and more than some is not fine. Next. General principle, Health for Life magazine, forgiveness. Don't hold on to hurt that someone has caused you, or circumstances that may not be someone, but circumstances caused some misfortune. Like Viktor Frankl. It was misfortune for sure, but he turned it around and took the opportunity. Thousands of people received benefit from his consultation and his writings and his teachings in school and seminars and things to help people deal with the emotions that are caused by circumstances they can't do anything about, rather than obsess about they can't do anything about it. How to handle your internal life. And one of the things that when some damage is done by someone else to you, to be forgiving, or at least consider. Maybe not, forgetting is one thing, and forgiving is another thing. Don't hold on to that negative emotion, in other words, and let it go. Next, we're almost done. This is Bhagavad Gita, Krishna speaking to Arjuna, a couple of Bhagavad Gita verses. Next. O mighty armed son of Kunti, it is undoubtedly very difficult to curb the restless mind, but it is possible by suitable practice and by detachment. So this is 6-chapter Bhagavad Gita. Some of you are probably familiar somewhat with Bhagavad Gita. Dhyan Yoga. So controlling the mind. It's not easy, but it's possible. So suitable practice and detachment. Next. Deliberate spiritual practice is effective. For somebody that's been practicing bhakti yoga for over 50 years, I can attest. The beginning may not be a piece of cake, but it has its cumulative effect. Over time, some standard discipline, and along with your corporate work or your professional work, and your families and all the other things that you have to deal with in life, If there's something that's spiritually centering, it gives you strength and wisdom and capacity to deal with going beyond duality. Next, we're almost done. This is from Bhagavad Gita again. One whose happiness is within, who is active and rejoices within, and whose aim is inward, is actually the perfect mystic. He is liberated in the Supreme, and ultimately he attains the Supreme. So that's, where the yoga train goes if you become immersed in it. And it doesn't have to do with being a monk. It has to do with your consciousness and how you direct your consciousness. Cultivate. Next. What's the essence, the Vedic understanding of stress or trauma? Very simple definition. Next. Trauma or stress is that experience which makes us think and experience ourselves as anything different from who we really are. That's platform of stress. Say it the other way. If you're connected with who you really are, this is on the spiritual platform, who you really are, then the circumstances of life are not going to send you into a tizzy or to a debilitated state, overly stressed and unable to properly perform. Next. A living entity in his pure, original constitutional position is Satchit Ananda, full of eternity, knowledge, and bliss. The lotus flower being an emblem of all of that. Next. Last. This is from Srimad Bhagavatam. Beside the practice of yoga, this is Yayatma Suprasidati. Prasanna is contentment within. Suprasana is complete contentment within. And when that complete contentment within is experienced, then you're okay. The circumstance can be this or that. You're okay because you're connected with who you really are. And there's a satisfaction within. That was the starting point of this whole little presentation. And that's the ending point of the whole little presentation. Ending in getting to the position where there's satisfaction within. Best place for stress management. Next. There's the Hare Krishna mantra. Next. This is my spiritual master. My first encounter with Prabhupada was when I was in college, in undergraduate school. And he came to the campus where I was a student. And I didn't know who he was. I didn't know anything about anything. And he was traveling from visiting a few universities with Allen Ginsberg. No, you probably don't know who Allen Ginsberg is. Allen Ginsberg was a celebrated American poet, kind of famous and kind of infamous at the same time. Infamous in the sense that he was an advocate of LSD. And what he did was he took LSD and then he wrote poetry. And then he would recite his poetry in poetry sessions, and people would like his stream of consciousness poetry. He was like a well-known figure. But in addition to writing poetry and LSD, he liked India. He'd visit India a number of times. He liked mantra chanting, so my spiritual master, and Allen Ginsberg were visiting college campuses, and they visited the campus where I was. And the detail is, I was walking through, coincidentally, walking through the student union one fine day, one evening, and there was a big crowd of people around an assembly room, Millard Fillmore room. So I always wondered what's going on inside there. So I wiggled my way through the crowd at the door, and they're on a stage. There's Allen Ginsberg. He had a receding hairline with hair that went all over the place, like Albert Einstein, kind of really thick glasses, and playing bongo drums. Well, Prabhupada was playing kartals and chanting Hare Krishna. And it was mesmerizing. I didn't know what it was. I never had any experience like that before. And I was charmed. So I became interested in learning more. And, events started happening in my life that just changed my life without all the details of how that happened. So the sound vibration is very powerful. And it doesn't have to be extremely life-changing like my life changed, but it can be very centering and, for the topic, stress reducing, making one's internal consciousness stronger. And with that happens, then the external circumstances become much easier to deal with in a balanced way. So that's the stress management topic. See if there's any discussion. And sorry for the technology shortcomings, but what to do? My experience is the first question takes a while, and then there's more. So let's see. Very patient.
Can you talk something about meditation?
Sure.
I've read and heard there are numerous ways of doing meditation.
Oh, yeah.
There are, I think, almost every human being has its own rules of meditation. But so what is the simplistic form, and what would be more suitable for working people like us? We do have the stress and worry of our jobs. That's where it starts with. With that, how can meditation help, and what kind, if at all?
So you got to hold. You threw 5 balls, and I got to catch 5 balls. But I'll. Many of our members, like you, are in the working field. I'm the exception. I'm the oddball, and the norm is people that have families and jobs and professions and responsible work. So what is it according to studies as well as practical experience as well as scriptural teaching, sound vibration is the most effective. And then comes selection, which sound vibration. There have been studies on that. There was a study at the University of Florida in Gainesville, without all the detail. A PhD was given for someone that did a study on the answer to your question. Specifically, the answer to the question of which sound vibration. Because it was already Herbert Benson gave the conclusion, sound, of meditation types. And there's a reason, you engage the ear, you engage the tongue, you engage the mind. It helps keep the mind fixed to engage those 2 prominent senses. Maybe seeing something, seeing a mandala or seeing the mantra or seeing the deity or seeing, so that's the eye. But the focus is on sound. So rather than going through what the experiment he did, you don't get a PhD at a big university and it's fluff. So his findings were that the chanting of Hare Krishna mantra compared to chanting of Om and then chanting of a placebo mantra. Placebo mantra means it's gobbledygook syllables and really didn't do anything. But they told the persons doing the experiment it would do the same thing. It wasn't Om, it was a standard mantra. I won't repeat what the standard mantra was. So, most effective. And it doesn't matter if one is a student or a grahastha or a sannyasi, or the later stages after their family and occupation, the vanaprastha state. It doesn't matter. It's not circumstance specific, it's principle. Sound vibration, most effective. Joined, it's nice to join with seeing the mantra or seeing the deity or seeing a nice painting or picture, or sometimes seeing a mandala or something that engages the eye, the ear, and the tongue. And so the mind can then be more easily captured. And the principle is some part of your day, ideally the early part of the day, before you do everything else, before the mode of passion starts, in the early morning hours, after sleep, body's rested, make the body clean, make the inside clean. Mantra meditation every day, every day. It's a Patanjali yoga system, Patanjali Sutra principle, just keeping it simple because of circumstance of time. Something that you do every day, there's Sanskrit phrases that he uses, over a prolonged period of time. And the third principle is where you have confidence it's going to take you to a good place. Every day, for a prolonged period of time, with confidence going to take you to a good place. So faith. So it's something that's standard. It's not something pulled out of the air or because it's popular or something. Something that's authorized, coming from the Vedas, a Vedic system. And every day, for a long period of time, and little by little by little, little by little by little. So two things happen in that little by little. One is the covering becomes reduced, means the light goes on, so the covering, the darkness is reduced, and the original consciousness of the living entity becomes restored. And can that happen in your corporate professional life? Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's not, a quick fix. It's something that's gradual, just like illness doesn't happen quickly. Generally, illness is progressive over a period of time, and wellness is gradual, progressive. Right medicine, right diet, over a prolonged period of time. In the illness, if it's good medicine, good diagnosis, it's effective. So the starting point is for persons like ourselves, corporate jobs, busy lives, not sufficient enough of stress, thank you. What's recommended? What type of meditation? Sound. Mantra meditation. And that standard mantra, there's a number of references that say, of all, in this age of Kali, this Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, is especially effective. It's right in the Upanishads. So that's particular combination of words. And then, somebody can do whatever they want with that. But it's a Vedic Upanishadic statement, and it's been demonstrated in the lives of people like yourself, busy, successful, and stressed. It's not a lot of time for extra stuff. So you have to be careful with how you use your time. So early in the morning, before the passion hours begin. So the mode of goodness hours. Brahma Muhurta, ideally. You know what that means, right?
The most challenging.
Well, Brahma Muhurta is technical without going, it's before the sun rises.
Correct.
There's some detail. So there's something else over here. You have something.
How do we balance between set targets and, living in future and not to worry about future?
How do you balance between what and what?
How do we balance between the targets that are being
The
set
targets that we have.
and living in present and not to worry about future? That is my first question.
You have to have intelligence. If you don't have intelligence, you're lost. So where do you get intelligence from? From Bhagavad Gita. You get intelligence from super soul. So you familiar a little bit with Bhagavad Gita? Okay. Go back and look at chapter 2, text 41, and it's Krishna speaking to Arjuna about buddhi yoga, buddhi, intelligence, the yoga of intelligence. And the yoga of intelligence is vyavasayatmika buddhi ekeha kurdhanandana. So if your purpose is focused, then you're more likely to get intelligence, how to deal with complexity, than if you don't have intelligence. And if you don't have intelligence, then the alternative he presents, bahushaka, many branched. Their attention is all over the place, splayed out, is the vernacular. And that nothing really gets substantially accomplished because one's splayed out. So how can you or I or any one of us become in the former category instead of the latter category? It's by practicing Bodhi Yoga, or Bodhi that's given to one unto one who is practicing the art of how to take your activities of life, because there are different departments in everyone's life, and how to keep them focused on the one thing. The one thing is that Krishna should be pleased. I mean, that's from the Bhagavad Gita's perspective. Anukulyena Krishna Anushilanam, that Krishna should be pleased. There's a nice definition I like. It's in Chaitanya Charitamrita. It gives a definition of faith. Shraddha means faith. Shraddha Shabde, this is Bengali. It is said that faith is Vishvas Kahe, that everything desirable can be achieved by one thing. If I know what that one thing is, I'm not splayed out. I'm very focused. Now, the one thing is that Krishna Bhakti, Sarva Karma Kritahai. So you have a corporate job, you have a family, you have duties, you have relationships, you have children, you have parents, you have friends, you have stuff you have to take care of. Mortgage you have to pay, and medical bills, and complicated life. That's the purpose. And if you can be clear, to the degree that you can become clear what the purpose is, you'll have intelligence how to deal with that diversity and complexity better than if you don't have a sense of purpose. It's a different way of saying what Viktor Frankl said. It's Krishna's way of saying, or Viktor Frankl has his way of saying what Krishna said. Or, it's the same principle. Clear what your goal is. Over on this side is birth, over on that side is death, and in between is life, and what goes in the middle? What's my mission, and why am I here? Fundamental question. What am I supposed to do with this human form of life? So if you takes some time to get refinement of the answer to that question, but keep asking the question and refining your question, and refine it and refine it and refine it, and then you have the intelligence to discern how to do all those complexities with single-mindedness, with focus. And here comes an unexpected something. Okay, stay focused. And now, just like life throws rocks at you, here comes the rock. An unexpected rock, and it hurt. So then you go through the same procedure. What are my alternatives? What's my purpose? What are something that I can practically... So then you get in that mode of goodness, reflective space, you're more likely to get intelligence than if you get reactive to the complexities and the circumstances. Mode of goodness, I'm advocating, because Bhagavad Gita advocates. And then in that mode of goodness, what's the purpose? What's life mission? Don't ask it, you're not going to get an answer. Ask it, you're more likely to get an answer. and refine the answer, refine the question, refine the answer. And then wisdom literature helps guide you towards that, the sharp point. So at least go in the right direction, and then keep asking. Don't be complacent, keep asking. And refine it, and refine it, refine it. That's mature. That's a mature person. And that mature person then can be the best friend of others, their family members and their other friends and their everything. In Bodhi Yoga, chapter 2, text 41, Bhagavad Gita. And then he introduces the principle, and then he discusses it further. Bodhi Yoga. Yoga of intelligence, Bodhi, spiritual intelligence. Spiritual intelligence doesn't cast aside material intelligence, but rather material intelligence becomes subservient to spiritual intelligence. There's the emperor, then there's kings. And Buddha, spiritual intelligence, that's the emperor. And he used to be honored. And how do you get that connection? It's discussed, chapter 2, in principle. Wisdom literature. I call it, keep it simple, wisdom literature. Because all cultures have wisdom literature. Anything? Okay. 6:20. Okay, here you go.
I also wanted to introduce one of my closest friends, Arvind, if you want to come up. So Arvind lives in Avon, and he works as a VP of Corporate Development at Mott. And he's associated with ISKCON. His wife and him run the Sunday school for kids. And we find that it's very useful to have that started at a very early age for the kids, especially with the Gen Z, Gen Alpha, and whatnot that will come. So I think making sure that the kids are able to get to the reality of why they are here, what is their purpose, those are the kind of things that they cover. But Arvind, if you want to just introduce yourself.
No, you did well, but just wanted to thank you all for coming. I know it's not easy to make time for events like this. And first of all, thank you, Mayank, for pulling this together. This is the first of a kind that we are trying here in Hartford, like having a corporate program. And what a great venue. Hopefully we can do more of these and have more people attend maybe in the coming years. So, but thank you for your participation. Maybe one thing that comes to mind is, it's important after a talk like this to sustain what you hear, right? And so I have daily practice myself. So I'll be in touch with Mayank. I'm planning to create maybe some morning program where I'm doing this chanting. Perhaps we can do it on Zoom. So if any of you is interested, you can join as well. Okay? That's a nice way for us to inspire each other and keep in touch and manage with stress. It's inevitable. Thank you. Thank you for hosting us.
So we'll have the prasadam now. So everyone can stick around and exchange thoughts with Maharaj, with Arvind, since everyone has been practicing it for a long time. So they can share some insights and questions like Prashant you had about how do I get started? How do I really get into it? What is the simplest approach so that it's not becoming a chore, so that it's easy for me to just incorporate it into the day. So, and Arnav, thank you for setting it all up so that we can really have a good session. All right, thank you all for participating.
Man behind the scenes.
Yeah, yeah.